Good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Cathers, Executive Director of the Kentucky Arts Council, and I'm pleased to welcome you to Kentucky Writers' Day 2024. This morning, I'd like to welcome our special guests, Secretary Lindy Casebeer of the Tourism Arts and Heritage Cabinet, Dr. Everett McCorvey, Chair of the Kentucky Arts Council Board of Directors, Dior Cotton, Vice Chair of the Kentucky Arts Council Board of Directors. I also want to take a moment to offer a land acknowledgement. Today, we stand on ground occupied by ancient peoples whose history has been lost, but whose legacy remains. The evidence of these ancient people can be seen all over Kentucky through the mounds and artifacts left behind. Today, over 170 American Indian tribes are represented by their members living and working in the Commonwealth. Let us honor those who are here now, and build on the legacy of stewardship of the land that they left for us into the seventh generation. We are fortunate to have this beautiful place, the Thomas D. Clark Center for Kentucky History, to learn more about the Commonwealth's past so that we can prepare for the future. The center is a part of the Kentucky Historical Society, and I'd like to welcome Scott Albee, Executive Director, to say a few words. We greatly appreciate being able to use this wonderful space for the second time this year. So thank you, Scott, for making it possible.
Well, good morning, and welcome to the Thomas D. Clark Center for Kentucky History, home of the Kentucky Historical Society. And thank you, Chris. We are honored to be the site for this year's Kentucky's Writers' Day. For those of you who are not familiar with our work, we are the state's historical society. We support history through statewide programs, provide educator resources, and operate a research center. Since 1836, the public has entrusted us to be the keeper of the Commonwealth's legacy. We oversee 3 historic sites and protect a treasure trove of documents and artifacts for the public. These include manuscripts, books, postcards, letters, all forms of writing that captures our thoughts, feelings, and opinions of our Kentucky experience. We not only collect and preserve, but are empowered by history and the literary arts to build community and a promising future. I often lean on Kentucky's Wendell Berry when I speak about the value of history and the humanities and how it reveals what it means to be a Kentuckian. Wendell said, "When a community loses its memory, its members no longer know each other. How can they know each other if they've forgotten or never learned each other's stories? If they do not know each other's stories, how can they know whether or not to trust each other? People who do not trust each other do not help each other, and moreover, they fear each other." This year, we celebrate the 25th anniversary of the opening of the Thomas D. Clark Center for Kentucky History, or the Kentucky History Center as it was back then. And I would like to share with you a poem by Richard Taylor, Kentucky Poet Laureate from 1999 to 2000, written for this occasion. It was titled, "On the Opening of the Kentucky History Center, April 10th, 1999. What lies inside does not duplicate. The past, the acts, the words, the regimental flags, and willow work that sketch at best a semblance of our former selves. Instead, here, we reclaim what we can, the gist of who we were, landmarks on the map of our shared journey, the rivers into which our own rivulets and branches feed. Here the waters gather as a single stream of whose current holds the sum of our accumulated past. A flint scraper, surveyor's compass, manacles, a coverlet in whose weavings we recognize both grief and promise, a textured richness that is our own. So we enter from the daylight to estimate the past, not as we color it in myth or fiction, not to worship, but simply to know it is as it was, so much as we can know it. And in knowing offers clues to who we were, we are, we will be." Thank you all for being here, and welcome to the Historical Society.
Thank you, Scott. The Kentucky General Assembly established Kentucky Writers' Day in 1990 to honor our strong literary tradition and to celebrate the anniversary of the birth of Robert Penn Warren. A Todd County native, Warren is the nation's first poet laureate. Today is his birthday, so happy birthday, sir, which is why we celebrate Writers' Day on or around April 24th each year. Warren attended Vanderbilt University, where he became the youngest member of the Fugitives, a group of Southern poets who advocated for rural agrarian traditions. He was a Rhodes Scholar and received a Pulitzer Prize for fiction for All the King's Men. He also received 2 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry, the first for Promises, poems from 1951 through 1956, which also earned the Sidney Hillman Award, the Edna St. Vincent Millay Memorial Award, and the National Book Award, and then the second for Now and Then poems from 1976 to 1978. Robert Penn Warren served as Chancellor of the Academy of American Poets from 1972 to 1988 and received a MacArthur Fellowship in 1981. He was named the first U.S. Poet Laureate consultant in poetry in 1985 and held that position until his death in 1989. Kentucky began naming its own poet laureates in 1926 with the James T. Cottonneau. A new poet laureate is inducted in odd-numbered years as part of the Kentucky Writers' Day ceremony. In addition to celebrating Writers' Day, we acknowledge National Poetry Month in April. We hope that across the Commonwealth, in libraries, classrooms, community centers, and elsewhere, that the people of our Commonwealth are taking time to celebrate our great literary arts traditions. Today at 1 p.m., you can join most of the Poets Laureate at the Kentucky Poets Laureate reading at the Paul Sawyer Public Library at 319 Wapping Street, just a few blocks from here. The library's readings has become a tradition that extends the celebration of Writers' Day. After today's Kentucky Writers' Day celebration, please grab some lunch at one of Frankfort's wonderful downtown restaurants, and then head over to the library to enjoy the readings and take some time to talk with the poets and other writers. Through the Kentucky Arts Council, our state awards more than 300 grants and awards annually to artists, schools, libraries, community centers, community organizations, and arts organizations, many of which are directed to promoting the literary arts in our state. Grant programs like the Teaching Art Together grant promotes collaborations between teachers, students, and professional artists and writers, and designed to design and implement art programs in our schools and help foster Kentucky's rich tradition of excellence in the literary arts. Our Individual Artists Fellowship and Emerging Arts Awards recognize and encourage the excellence of individual Kentucky artists, including literary artists, by providing cash awards to enable them to continue developing their work. All the Poets Laureate in attendance today are fellowship recipients. And the Arts Council's Kentucky Arts Partnership Grant, which provides support to Kentucky arts and cultural organizations whose primary mission is to provide Kentuckians with year-round arts programming. The Kentucky Arts Council is one of 13 agencies to make up the Kentucky Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet, and the Arts Council Board of Directors and staff are proud to represent the Cabinet on this important work. We value the leadership and guidance we receive from the Cabinet, and in that spirit, it's my pleasure to introduce the Secretary of the Commonwealth's Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet, Lindy K. Spear.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be here on Kentucky Writers' Day. April 24th is one of my favorite days of the year because we always celebrate Kentucky writers on that day, and I always look forward to that day with great anticipation. Appreciate the Kentucky Arts Council for their spearheading this event, and Chris, your leadership on that, and all the staff with the Kentucky Arts Council. We appreciate your hard work. We lay claim in Kentucky to incredible literary legacy, which serves home to so many amazing writers. And that's evident right here by the folks assembled in the front row, our former Poets Laureate. And it's great to see all of you all here today. We celebrate on Kentucky Writers' Day our storytellers and inspiring folks, young and old, who share their stories. And as Chris alluded to, at the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet, we share the goal of ensuring that that the arts include every Kentuckian. The Commonwealth is made up of individuals from diverse backgrounds and experiences, and it's important that all those perspectives have a seat at the table. All of you play a critical role in that effort. The arts are a critical factor in Kentucky's economy, generating $6.1 billion annually in economic impact and supporting over 47,000 jobs throughout the Commonwealth. 47,000 jobs. That's the creative industry, that's clean industry, and it's an important sector in Kentucky's economic development. And our governor, we're fortunate to have a governor that we do who is a true champion for the arts and an advocate for tourism and the arts industry and a committed supporter of all of the artists. Governor Beshear understands the importance of the arts and has shown true leadership in making economic investments in the support and recovery of the arts industry. So please join me in sharing this special video that the governor has made for us.
Hi everyone, it's Andy. Welcome to the 2024 celebration of Kentucky Writers' Day. Kentucky is fortunate to have so many gifted literary artists sharing their talents with us. Today, you're going to get to hear from some of these writers, including our own Poet Laureate, Silas House. He's going to talk about his experience in this position and the exciting plans he has as he closes out his term. I'm grateful for Silas's service to the state representing Kentucky writers for the past year. And let me tell you, we've kept him busy so far. He's held 2 writing workshops at our state parks in celebration of our Kentucky Parks 100th anniversary. And he has at least 1 more workshop on the way. I'm especially grateful to Silas for agreeing to write a piece for my inauguration in December. He read Those Who Carry Us, and it was one of my favorite moments of the day. I've always said that art has the power to move us, inspire us, and spark change, and that day was living proof. I also want to thank the Kentucky Arts Council and the Kentucky Historical Society for holding this important celebration of Kentucky literature at the History Center. So enjoy today's festivities. With so many great Kentucky artists in one room, it is sure to be a day to remember. And as always, keep doing good things and be kind to each other.
So now I would like to introduce another champion of the arts, our powerhouse leader, Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman. As a teacher, Lieutenant Governor Coleman appreciates the importance of the literary arts of our writers in setting an example for young people. Let's take a moment to watch her remarks.
Hello to all of you here today to celebrate Kentucky Writers' Day. If you're here from out of town, welcome to your state capitol and the Thomas D. Clark Center for Kentucky History. Governor Beshear and I continue to be proud of the work Silas House is doing as Kentucky's literary ambassador and for all of our former Poets Laureate. As a teacher, it's important to me that Kentucky students understand our traditions and that we have exemplary Kentucky writers that they can meet and talk to. Offering living Kentucky writers to students is important. For students to be able to see themselves in those writers is even more so. You have my wishes for a meaningful celebration of Kentucky literature today. Happy Writers' Day.
As Chris said, in addition to Writers' Day, we celebrate National Poetry Month in April. We are honored to host some talented folks with us today, several of whom will be speaking. This next speaker is a very impressive individual. She's a senior at Bardstown High School, where she is president of the Student Council. She is an alumnus of the Governor's School for the Arts, and she happens to be Kentucky's very first Youth Poet Laureate. Honored to introduce Youth Poet Laureate Amy Bolero Perez for a special reading. Amy.
So this piece is titled The Woman That Remained, and I've developed it a little since I've last read it, so I'm very excited. For her, it begins before the border. She walks through the desert for 1 week with nothing more than a few gallons of water and a prayer tucked into her pocket, hoping both will last her long enough. The sun is an unforgiving God, but any God is worth having right now. The wind pushing at her back is the grunt of gunshots from drug cartels and the desperation of a job to employ her stomach, and an uninvited guest at the doorstep. Her brother waits for her on the other side, hoping that her face still sings of home like it used to. Another step. She is only 18. She will learn that there are some borders you can't cross by foot. Go back to your country from the adjacent car in the back seat. White-teethed teens, as if their Irish ancestors never crossed Ellis Island. You and I, the first time we listened to Bolero with the windows rolled down, rolling letters, respiring syllables, the sweet taste of your soil. You rolled the windows up. This was the first time I realized you possessed shame. I was too young to know what borders meant. Still, you remained. The second, when you apologized for being my mother, a stack of mail, I learned enough English to translate. You laughed. Perdón por no tener escuela. I was older. Your words were an overspilling of blood, a piercing steel. You gifted me an ache. Still, you remained on the news. They talk about kids like me. Anchor babies. You turn to me and you reassure me I wasn't just a tool but a dream. You cleaned houses that you'd never get to live in so that I could sit in a college classroom and say, I am here. You remained, but Mama, my love doesn't demand your home stay a secret. My love demands no knowledge of the English language. My love doesn't demand citizenship. Mama, in my country, you have always been enough, because like a weed, the infectious disease they claim you, without water, without sun, you remain. Speak English. This is America, trampled and beat, still you remain. Mama, America no solo tiene una lengua. The aftertaste of cilantro, flour, limón, afternoon tacos de asada. Mija, ven a comer. As the odor of bleach from peeling hands, your lance folk tales, they tried ripping you from the root. Still you remained a relic. Scars you obtained from your pueblo, the miles of sand, rays of sun spilling between folds of childhood. You left it behind that day. The aftermath, burns outdone by a stubborn dancer of a tongue. Although your country wasn't enough for you, still you remain. Let me be your promised land. I know I've barely begun to build. Ashes, critters, weeds, towers of an empire you hope for me to be. Place your bets on me. I will be the ocean you long to sink in. Paris, Venice, Greece, your New York City you so long to see. I will wrap you in waves of water instead of sand. I will water you. I will allow my heart to be your sun. I will surrender myself to be your home, tu hija, not an anchor. There are some borders you can't cross by foot, but borders that can only be crossed by a stubborn backbone. So wear your tongue like a cape. Afraid you can't afford to dream. So if they come for you, tell them in the language you know best, that you are not afraid anymore. So I beg you, hold on to me. Remain here with me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
proud to say she's an alum of Governor's School for the Arts. That's one of our hallmarks of our cabinet. We're so proud of you, Amy. And I first saw you at GSA, and how impressive you remain, and even more so. Thank you so much. It's now my pleasure to introduce an individual that I've had the honor to get to know better since he became Poet Laureate. I first met Silas at a book signing in 2018, and when he was signing my book, I was just in awe. And I told him then, I said I could listen to you talk all day, because having heard him on NPR and KET, but when I read his books, I can just hear his voice saying the words on the page. But he has been so amazing for us at the Kentucky Tourism and Arts and Heritage Cabinet. As the governor said, he's done 2 workshops, writers' workshops at our state parks, and going to do a 3rd. I mean, it's very generous on his part. He's been so generous with his time. But if you don't know, he's the author of 7 novels. He's received multiple awards recognizing his work, including the 2023 Southern Book Prize, the 2023 Nautilus Book Award, and the Dudgeon's Prize, the largest award for an LGBTQ writer in the nation. He has captured the hearts and minds and souls of Kentuckians and folks across the nation. Silas, we appreciate you. You're a Kentucky treasure. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce you at this time.
Good morning. Thank y'all for being here. I got to get all my technology together here. I'm still recovering from Amy's reading. That was amazing. Wow. I can't imagine being that talented and confident in high school. You're in high school? Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right. Let's see where I am. There we are. Well, it has been my honor to serve as the Poet Laureate for the last year. I've told everyone that being Poet Laureate has renewed my faith in government. While I've worked closely, so closely with people within the governor's administration, I've witnessed how hard they work, how much they care about serving Kentuckians, how passionate they are about their jobs, and so it renews my faith in politics and government, and in so many instances I've seen that it really works, and they make it work, and so I'm so thankful to them. Chief among them has been the governor himself. I'm so proud to be in this role with a governor I admire and respect, especially due to his dedication to the arts and his insistence on treating everyone with equality and compassion. The governor's chief of staff, Latasha Buckner, has been generous and so helpful. I'm thankful to the lieutenant governor for her commitment to the arts, as well as to always standing for public school teachers and public education so firmly. In that time, I have tried to accept as many invitations as I can to schools, colleges, universities, libraries, and other organizations throughout the state. I have worked most closely so far with the Kentucky Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet, as you just heard, particularly with the Secretary Casebeer, on many projects that I'll tell you about shortly. But Secretary Casebeer's entire staff has been so wonderful, and I especially want to give a shout out to Seth Wheat at the Kentucky State Parks and his staff. Secretary Casebeer seems to be working around the clock for Kentuckians and certainly has a deep commitment to the arts. And of course, I want to especially thank my fellow Poet Laureates for their encouragement, generosity, support, and guidance, especially Crystal Wilkinson, who handed the baton to me. And they've all just offered so much love, and I appreciate that, of course. And I'm indebted to everyone at the Kentucky Arts Council for their patience and cooperation. They've been incredibly supportive of my work as Poet Laureate, and I'm especially thankful to Tamara Coffey, Tom Musgrave, and Chris Cathers for being wonderful to work with. Our arts and arts education are in great hands here in the Commonwealth. We are so lucky in Kentucky to have the Arts Council we have. And I always want to remind people that not all states have that, and they certainly don't have an Arts Council as dedicated as ours. Well, I've been asked to give you a report on what I've been doing for the last year, and in putting it together, it feels a little bit like bragging, to like tell you all this stuff, but it's our tradition to give an accounting of what the Poet Laureate has been up to. So that's what I'll do here, and then I'll share just a few poems. But first I want to tell you about a few of the projects I've been working on over the past year and plans for other projects coming up in the next year. Perhaps most publicly, I was honored to be asked by the governor to write a poem for his second inauguration. It was a real joy to read that poem on a cold but beautiful day back in December, a day that made so many of us proud to be Kentuckians. That poem is called Those Who Carry Us, and focused in particular on what we've been through together over the last 4 years in Kentucky, particularly extreme weather and the pandemic. And it's a tribute not only to how well the governor carried us through that, but how we carried each other as Kentuckians, most of us. And a little more about that later. The most special aspect of being Poet Laureate has been meeting students throughout the state over the past year. And so I have a few pictures of those classes that I've attended all over the state. My parents went on one of them with me. That was fun. I'm a little terrified of large groups of children, but once you get there, you talk to them. They're so loving and eager to learn and excited about art. And sometimes during these trips, also just have community conversations. For example, this was at the Cowan Creek Community Center. And during lunch, I had a lunch break. I was in the Letcher County schools all day, and I had a lunch break, and they said, "Would you like to talk to an elder in the community during lunch?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so we sat on stage and ate dumplings and peanut butter roll, and we just had a conversation about different generations and things like that. And moments like that make the travel just worth it. Often I'm in classrooms, and sometimes they'll have read my work, sometimes they haven't. Oh, there's a confidence monitor. I'm just seeing that. Sometimes it's, in a gymnasium or an auditorium. That's when it gets scary for me, when there are, 500 of them, and they will ask you anything, But, the schools, they're so welcoming, and they create banners and posters and dioramas of your work, and they give you their artwork. And I don't know, it just sort of renews your faith in humanity every time you visit a school and you spend time with the students. And also, just seeing so many teachers who are so dedicated to their students and their work, it makes me feel better. It gives me hope. And sometimes I don't always have hope these days. And so I need that going into the schools and having that hope renewed. Sometimes, of course, I'm only able to do that through Zoom. And I enjoy those too. In this case, I was teaching a poetry workshop to students at Appleshop's Appalachian Media Institute. And they took the poetry prompt that I gave them, and they made short films out of those. And then they took them to festivals. And I mean, you know, people are just doing amazing work, teachers, grassroots organizations. And so it's always such a pleasure to see that work happening. I've also visited a lot of independent bookstores as much as possible, and the biggest part of that has been fostering new talent, young writers. In the lower corner there is a former student of mine who just published his first book, and so we did a big release with him in Morehead at Coffee Tree Books, which up until very recently was the only bookstore in eastern Kentucky. Now there are two that I know of, that one and the Red Spotted Newt in Hazard. And so then we started doing the writing workshops at the Kentucky State Parks. Secretary Case Beer had told me that it was the 100th birthday, and I believe it was his idea to have workshops, and I was glad to do it. And I wanted to do the first one at the state park where I basically grew up, Cumberland Falls State Park, and then the next one was Del Hollow State Park, which is a really special place to me. And then we're moving west as we go. And so next time, I believe we're shooting for Lake Barkley. We may do one at Pennyrile too, maybe, I hope. We'll see. Okay. Well, we're going to do a couple more. And that has been really wonderful because it has brought in a lot of people that wouldn't normally go to writing workshops. You know, I mean, Del Hollow State Park is in a pretty remote part of the state. It's not near an interstate, for instance, you know. And so that one in particular brought in a lot of local people. And so we spend 3 or 4 hours in writing class. We do prompt work. We go on hikes together. When we were at the falls, we went down to see the moonbow together. And they share the work. We eat together. The state parks allow dogs, so people bring their dogs, so we have our dogs together. That's wonderful. At the last one, an 18-year-old student, she's at UK, just started at UK, and she read a piece that just blew all of us away. And so again, you know, just it's renewing hope. It gives me so much faith in what's coming, and just like Amy's work. Just to see that coming from our young people and see that that Kentucky literary tradition is continuing so strongly. And I also have taught writer workshops at other places throughout the state. This one is at Hyman Settlement School, which is a special place to me. It's where I was sort of born as a writer. I was honored to appear in my capacity as Poet Laureate at this year's Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame, which is put on every year by the Carnegie Center, which just does tremendous work for the Commonwealth and even beyond. And I was really honored to be able to present the Kentucky Literary Impact Award to the family of Mike Mullins, who was director for many years at Hyman Settlement School. Many of you know him and have been influenced by him. And it's also just really wonderful to be able to be a part of this writing community. And I mean, it's always been wonderful, but to go to these events and to keep building that community, and I just love the way that the Kentucky writing community supports each other, the way that we show up for each other at events, or we just share each other's events on social media, or, you know, sometimes you even have a writer who will show up and bring you food when you're grieving or sick. So it's a wonderful community to be a part of, and it's vital, it's vibrant. You know, people say to me all the time, it must be awful to be a writer in Kentucky where there are no bookstores, there's no culture, etc. And I mean, every writer in this room knows there's plenty to keep us busy in Kentucky. It's a lot is going on. Excuse me. Recently, the Country Music Hall of Fame did an exhibit on Kentucky music and just how huge that tradition is. And so they have a special part of that exhibit about the writing involved, and so they have a little exhibit about my work as poet laureate there. So I was really tickled about that growing up in a family that loved country music so much. I attended the Appalachian Studies Association, representing us as poet laureate, and was part of lots of panels with writers there, doing the academic work as well. I got to attend the Grammys this year, and the main reason I want to show you this is because everything that I wore was made by a Kentucky artist, and that was really important to me to get to talk about that with everybody there. People keep saying, what was your favorite part of going to the Grammys? Sorry. And they expect me to say, you know, seeing whatever music star. But my favorite part was that Kentuckians are magnets, and the way the Kentuckians there all came together and stuck together the whole time. One of my platforms that I wanted to do right away was create a podcast, and so I just recorded the third episode of that. It's not up yet, but the first episode was David Arnold, who is a wonderful young adult writer living in Lexington from Kentucky. The second episode was former poet laureate Georgella Lyon, talking about picture books and writing for children. The next episode will be Barbara Kingsolver, and I will be hitting up lots of people in this room to be on that when life slows down for you. And so we're on every platform, anywhere there's a podcast, you can find us. So please listen to the show, like it, give us 5 stars. If you don't give us 5, don't even bother, right? Leave a review, subscribe. I was just telling Georgella the episode that she and I did together, I looked this morning, and it's been listened to in 32 countries, which just is, you know, a testament to the power of the internet and the way these platforms get out there. I was part of the Southern Storytellers documentary for PBS, representing Kentucky specifically as poet laureate, and also in a new documentary called Books Across America that has not been released yet, but is being shot to streaming services. I was really honored to be a part of Becoming Bell Hooks, a documentary about Bell Hooks, and just talking about her legacy, particularly how proud she was of her rural roots. I served as a judge for the National Book Awards this year, last year for this year's awards, and was in New York for several days for that. Sorry, I'm struggling with allergies. And this was the judges, this was us. We represented the United States. And the National Book Awards is really going above and beyond in trying to represent the whole United States. And, you know, in some years it has tended to be a bunch of New York writers. And so they're really changing that. And so these 5 people, it's basically you can go across the whole map of the United States. And so we worked for about 9 months on choosing the National Book Award. And then you narrow it down to 5. And then the day of the ceremony, you have to get in a room together. This is us in the room together. And so you sort of battle it out. You talk about who's going to be the winner for, I think we went for about 4 hours. So that's at the end of our 4-hour lunch when we had finally decided. I was proud to represent Kentucky at the National Press Club in D.C. recently as part of a Kentucky contingent. And at the Americana Music Awards, they put their focus on Kentucky this year. Each year they're choosing a different state to focus on their music, and they started with Kentucky, which I think is indicative of how important Kentucky's music has been for Americana, for country, folk, all music. And so I was there specifically as poet laureate, and that was my whole role, was to represent the state in that capacity. And so I spoke several times over the course of that 4-day conference. I'm currently shooting a TV show called Distilled in Kentucky, and it'll be 8 episodes, and in each episode we visit a different distillery, and we interview a different emerging artist, an established artist, and local people who are doing amazing things. Like the one guest I can tell you about in the first episode is Lawrence Weeks, who's chef at North of Bourbon in Louisville, and a dear friend of mine who is just doing amazing stuff with food and community and history, and just to hear him talk about whatever meal he puts down in front of you is just like this whole history lesson and lesson in so much. So he's part of the show, 2 musicians. And so we're working really closely with tourism all over the state in doing that. The main thing I want to tell you about that I'm really happy about is that I've created a curriculum for all the schools in the state, and it'll be released to them soon so that they can incorporate it in next year's classes, I hope. It's called Listen Now, and it's an oral history program. And so I've designed this curriculum that gives them step-by-step instructions on how to teach their students how to do an oral history. It gives them different resources. It gives them suggested questions. It teaches them how to, do things like embed an audio file in a Word document and just things like that. Things that thankfully my children have taught me how to do so I can pass on. It even teaches them how to take a photograph to use in their oral history, gives them instructions on that, how to write a little bio for the photograph for the person. Some of you may recognize this is Johnny Lackey, who I was having coffee with, and I said, I need a portrait for this curriculum, so I took one of him. And so here's a little message that goes with it to the students. It's about 2 minutes.
I am Robert, and I'm currently serving as the Laureate of Kentucky. That means that I have implemented to represent commercial art in our state for years. One way I'm doing that is by building classrooms all over the Commonwealth, but I've also created a project that teachers can incorporate in their classrooms. This is called the Listen Now Oral History Project. When I was growing up, I always loved being around my older people in my family, my community, my grandparents, my great aunts and uncles, my neighbors. All of these people taught me important lessons about gardening, fishing, being a better person. They gave me knowledge that has been important to me throughout my life. I know that many of you have older people in your lives who are important to you as well. And if you don't, I hope you can speak out from this person. This project is a chance for teachers to encourage you to do that, to encourage you to talk to the elders in your life, and to find elders in your life. For this project, you will identify an older person in your family, and I would recommend that you pick someone who is at least 40 years older than you. The older someone is from you, the more different their life experiences will be from your own, and that will make things more interesting. The teacher will give you instructions on how to interview this person and how to preserve based on guidelines that I provided to them. I hope you'll see this as an opportunity to do something fun and constructive for graders in your class. You will be preserving the history of our family and community, the history of real Kentucky, and you will help to tell the story of Kentucky as it really is. This is important work, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. I will look forward to hearing and reading this oral history project. Until then, I hope you can take care of yourself, and I thank you.
So just a brief thing to explain what it's doing. If you know teachers who might be interested in this, please tell them to take advantage of the curriculum, and I'll be working with the Arts Council to get that out to all the teachers in the state. Just quickly, the next project we're going to be working on is trying to get signs erected on the state highways that identify, when you go into Casey County, Kentucky, you should know that's where Crystal Wilkinson's from, or et cetera. You go into Harlan County, you should know that's where George Ellis from, et cetera. And so we're working on, if Lee Majors gets a sign, I think the riders should get. No shade on Lee Majors, but we have the Country Music Highway. We acknowledge lots of things in our highway signs. I really want us to recognize the riders in our state in that way, in a way that's very visible to people passing through. And so hopefully I'll have a more detailed report about that next year. And I'm working on a lot of things, and I have published a lot of things this time. We don't need to spend time on those. I want to close by just reading a couple poems for you. The first one is a poem after A.E. Housman, a poet that I love, and it's an old-fashioned poem in that it rhymes. But I'm over 50, so I'm doing what I want to these days. And, it's called Lost Place. I hear a song that kills, yet is a hinge from my country so far, so close. What is that green, remembered ridge? What trees? What pastures are those? I float above crowded porches and tables, all these ghosts just beyond my reach. I would love them more if I was able to go back in time and believe. I recall the wild places, fecund, rich. I wade into the creek, diaphanous myself. Am I haint or witch? Listen to me. Once here was happiness. Now this is the land of beguiled. I see it before me, so plain, the little paths I trod as a child and will never mark again. This is called Treasure. I'm working on a poetry collection. A lot of it is memoir. And so it's sort of, a lot of the ones I'm working on right now are centered in childhood. Treasure. We lived in a little red and white trailer near the banks of Robinson Creek. Metal screen doors screech, brown paneled walls, bedrooms safe as wombs. Sandbox, beagle, the porch floor's concrete, cool and solid, wooden table, 4 chairs, my mother there, worried with checkbook, singing to the radio, I was country when country wasn't cool. Soup beans, cornbread, chow-chow, grilled cheese, pickled bologna, saltines, blue TV glow in a darkened room, the Waltons, Little House. Winston lights, peach knee-high, bottles of Stroh's, solitaire, rummy. The women laugh, wash dishes, hips touch. Men build a gnat smoke. Music from the church next door. Feet stomping, hands clapping, drums. God. I went with my daddy into the woods to dig a dogwood he planted in our yard. I hope the tree grows there today. I'm a long way gone from that place, yet marked by it still. They called us trailer trash, but oh, how sweet rain sounded on its roof. And I'll close with this little poem. It's called For My Dog. And it's true. I thought I might travel to the Amalfi Coast this summer, but then I realized that I would have to leave you behind, so I did not go. I prefer you, my little heating stove at my feet, to the warmth of 100 Italian suns. I would rather feel the rise and fall of your breath beneath my hand than all the bobbing boats of Positano. What good is seeing the Pietà when I can watch you watching me? The Trevi fountain has nothing on our little spot down by our creek where you like to doze while I read. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Silas. That's really exciting. You know, one of the things that we try to do at the Kentucky Arts Council is create opportunities for our artists and writers to live and work in Kentucky. And so this is such a powerful testament to what we're able to do as a collective when we support the creatives who live in our community. So, Amy, you started us off with a brilliant poem, and thank you, Silas, for all of that you're doing to highlight the work, your work, and writers in the state. So we really appreciate that. We're going to continue. Robert Taylor served as a Kentucky Poet Laureate from 1999 to 2000. He is the author of numerous collections of poetry, several books on Kentucky history, and 2 novels. The University Press of Kentucky has reprinted 2 of his books, Gertie, a novel, and Elkhorn, Evolution of a Kentucky Landmark. A writer of the Thomas D. Clark Medallion. His latest book, published last year by Accent Publication, is a short memoir called Fathers. Also in 2023, Richard was inducted into the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. He recently retired as the Keenan Visiting Writer at Transylvania University. Richard Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Silas, for all you're doing to promote the literary arts in Kentucky. This little poem is called A Witnessing in Late September. Reading on the paneled porch about Harlan Hubbard and his affinity for nature lived close to the bone, as if by way of footnote or illustration, I look up and see through the window against a backdrop of towering bamboo, the air a spinning galaxy of leaves, twirling wings the shape of spear points, a blizzard of yellow wonder for 2 full minutes, unlike anything I've ever seen. The lawn littered with slivers of gold peelings, as if cut from some celestial apple, bushels and bushels of them drifting from some unseen source, invisible in the way of all miracles, and brief in their performance, as if to confirm the words of poet Maureen Niedecker, ecstasy can't be constant. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard, and thank you, everyone. And Amy, I'm just so glad I had a little bit of reprieve to gather myself after your reading. Joe Survant served as Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2003 through 2004. He has published 6 collections of poems, most recently View from the Stork Building, Chinese Variations, and The Land We Dreamed, which completes his trilogy of narrative poetry about Kentucky. His poems have been published widely in the U.S., most recently in a Southern Poetry Review retrospective issue. His poems about Asia have been published in the UK, China, Malaysia, and Singapore, and this spring they'll be published in a bilingual collection from Kyoto, Japan. He is retired from teaching at Western Kentucky University. Welcome to the stage and share with us, Joe.
I was thinking about listening to Silas's presentation when the first thing I did as Poet Laureate was have a joint reading with James Becker Hall at Murray State University. And afterwards, you know, he was kind of giving me some advice, and we were talking about things, and he said, well, Joe, you know, the poet laureate position is starting to gain a little traction. Now, this was 20 years ago, so I'd say, Silas, you have a lot of traction, Silas. I'll read 2 or 3 short poems. One, I was cleaning out my attic recently and remembered doing that with my wife many years ago, and this is kind of a combination of present and past. House cleaning. Wasps, aroused from their adobe homes, stumble against the warming pane, unable to solve its transparency. A glass green fly drones its single engine through the dusty air. Closets are opened and trunks freed of bold trousers, flaring their cuffs and butterfly shirts, anxious to join the swarming insect air. Blankets layered tight like limestone are lifted to expose nests of stockings squirming at the light. Photos glisten like still moist eggs. In one, a girl sits on a white rail fence, balanced careful as a spring. The woman beside me leans over an open trunk. Something stirs on supple wings. Outside, the larva of a luna moth feeds on persimmon and sweet gum, waits to see what it will become. I have a pair of barred owls that hang around the woods behind my house. And of course, every once in a while, a group of crows will discover them. And you know, crows and owls don't mix real well. So this is just called Owl. The owl glides in on secret wings, silent as leaf flush. He knows the quick motives of chipmunks, the intimacy of mice. A cloud of clacking crows follows, full of anger and fear. They blow around him like ashes from a fire. Why do they hate his loneliness? I have come too far today. The paths of deer have deceived me with thicket and briar. I strain to hear their intricate message. Stormy crows rise up and wheel around my quietly brooding owl. I'll read one last poem, a kind of celebration of spring, since it's spring and Earth Day was just recent. It's called Benediction. We are grateful the deer have returned. Their stillness fills the woods. The dog stretches. The cat arches her back in appreciation. We are grateful the deer have returned. Squash glows like a secret in the garden. Rain gathers upon the beans. We are grateful the deer have returned. They stir memories so old, we make noises almost human. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Maureen Morehead served as Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2011 through 2012. She's a retired teacher from the Jefferson County Schools and is the Naslin Mann Graduate School of Writing, from the Naslin Mann Graduate School of Writing at Spalding University. She's published poems in many literary magazines, including the American Poetry Review, American Voice, the Kenyon Review, and Poetry Magazine. She's also published 6 books of poetry, 4 by Great Sights of Larkspur Press. The most recent is The Red Gate. Maureen Morehead.
Thank you. Can you hear me? It's so nice to be here today. I appreciate all the work that's gone into preparing this celebration for writers. I would like to mention our friend Dr. Sina Naslin, who intended to be here but unfortunately wasn't well enough, and of course we miss her. So I'm not going to read all these, but I've been trying to decide which one is the best for tone, and I can't decide. So I'm going to read you Sedona, July 2019. We were there right before COVID hit, and we had to couldn't travel anymore for a while. So when I finally made it to the flat top of the hill, having ascended a few hundred feet, a mile or so, into the Arizona sun, having near the end climbed hand over hand up red worn boulders, I found my husband and son walking on the rock, sockless, seeking with their toes the healing promise of the vortex we'd read so much about. Then I, good sport, albeit slow that I am, removed my shoes, the rock instantly burning the soles of my feet, each hopping accordingly toward a circle of shade offered by an old juniper. Shade so cool, no, cold. I thought of Blake's contrarieties, a politician's lie, for example, a child's blunt truth. Lately, the world below seems to be going backwards, hurtling toward time older than childhood, my parents' childhoods, older even than the ancient promise of reckoning. But by then, an old man I'd met on the trail distributing heart rocks sat cross-legged atop a pyramid, 3 kids, his back up there with him, and he's saying, "This song is for our sister, the sun, warming us atop this mountain, for red-tailed hawks nesting, a nation's waters parting. This but for the grace of God," all the while piping one tune repeatedly. Then I said to my skeptical self, I'd wager there's an elevator inside that rock, or at the very least a flight of stairs. But then I thought about that lighthouse on Nantucket, a beacon for the lost, misguided, frightened, hurt, and lonely. As the full moon is for me, the shoreline for my sister. Then I said to myself, you'd better get a head start down, waved to my husband and son, each pulling on his socks and hiking boots, so alike it's frightening. Said goodbye to Bill and Rosie, hikers I'd met walking up the trail who'd encouraged me to keep moving at my own pace. And goodbye to Sarah and Nick I'd met the day before on a longer, steeper, more dangerous trail, who'd offered high-protein food and sparkling water and assured me, you are on the right track. The one that took me a mile or so to the parking lot, car, hotel room, white beds, and blessed air conditioning. The television, spilling mad verses. A verse to one old man on fire, his song. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. As a California daughter, I think about my summers going to Nevada and Arizona and the deserts. You kind of transported me there, so thank you so much. Up next, Frank X. Walker served as Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2014 through 2014 and is the first African American to be named to the role in the Commonwealth. He is Professor of English and African American Africana Studies at the University of Kentucky. He has published 14 collections of poetry, including Turn Me Loose, The Unghosting of Medgar Evers, which was awarded the 2014 NAACP Image Award for Poetry, and the Black Caucus American Library Association Honor Award for Poetry. His first children's book, A is for Affrilacha, was released in 2023. Frank X. Walker.
Thank you, distinguished panel and all of our guests. I'm just going to read 2 poems. This first one is from a new series that deals with golf, of all things. But hopefully you'll hear the Frank in it. This first one is called Lions Before Tiger. And there's an epigraph from an interview that Tiger did about being a teenager trying to golf around the United States and not being allowed into some clubhouses. And he said, I wasn't allowed into the clubhouses with the other juniors. I just put on my shoes in the parking lot and asked 2 questions. Where was the first tee, and what was the course record? Tiger Woods. You would think young Tiger was golf's Jack Johnson, carrying white heavyweights around the ring and smiling before finishing them off with a flourish. And let's not forget the verisimilitude with porcelain arm candy and sporting women, the ignoring of racial norms or fears that might impose unacceptable limits on his performance in between the ropes or the sheets. Let's be clear, he might be the GOAT, but he wasn't the first. He wasn't the only train running, wasn't the only living legend. As quiet as it's kept, there were lions before Tiger. Charlie Sifford earned his tour card 14 years before Tiger was born. Ted Rhodes, Ben Spiller, Ann Gregory, Pete Brown, Althea Gibson, and Lee Elder all fought the good fight. Since I left high school in '79, Calvin Pete KO'd all comers 12 times. Yes, the first wave swung hard. They hit him long and straight. They took hard knocks and still got up and down. They threw their best combinations. They took so many punches. They are the real reason young Tiger was not a Jack, but an Earl. Privileged with 10 times the haters, but fewer gatekeepers and bigots in position to block his ascent. Freedoms they never had. His father didn't accept excuses. He demanded clenched teeth and the will to not just win in his son, Day Red, but to take their daily bread, snatch their holy grails, claim a space beside their own gods, make them worship him too. This last poem is just called I Want. I want to write a political poem to protest the senseless deaths, the genocide of almost 30,000 women and children in Palestine. I want to protest the spending of my tax dollars on bombs and munitions that helped kill them, making me complicit. I want to protest this country's profiteering and unwavering thirst and support for war, settler colonialism and oppression everywhere. But somebody will call me a coward. Somebody will claim I'm anti-Semitic, and I'm not. I want to protest the legislating of women's bodies, a 2-party system offering 2 bad choices, the erosion of voting rights and the rise of fascism. But somebody would declare me unpatriotic. Somebody would declare me a radical leftist. But somebody might call me a poet. Thank you.
Amen. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Georgella Lyon served as Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2015 to 2016. Because she talked early, Georgella's grandfather said of her, "Talk before you walk, and your tongue will be your ruin." So she became a writer. Much of her work has been inspired and shaped by the Harlan County voices she grew up with. Recent books include Back to the Light, Poems, and Time to Fly, a picture book. She was a recent inductee into the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. Georgetta Lyons.
Well, thank you to all who have worked to make this such a wonderful occasion, and thanks to all of you for being here. I'm just going to read one spring poem. Sparrows are nesting in the light pole again. The dad flies in straw from the neighbor's seeding and beaks it through the hole to his mate. Soon it will be all eggs and feathers in there, and hums if the light hums. And I'll be able to put my ear to the pole, knock on it gently, and hear the outburst of cheeps. Mama, Mama, come back, come back. Someone's knocking on the bottom of the world.
Thank you so much, Georgella. Crystal Wilkinson served as Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2021 to 2022. Crystal Wilkinson, a recent fellowship recipient of the Academy of American Poets, is award-winning author and praise song for The Kitchen Ghost, a culinary memoir, Perfect Black, a collection of poems and 3 works of fiction, The Birds of Opulence, Water, Street, and Blackberries. She is the recipient of an NCAA Image Award for Outstanding Poetry, an O. Henry Prize, a USA Artist Fellowship, and an Ernest J. Gaines Prize for Literary Excellence. She has received recognition from the Yaddo Foundation, Hedgebrook, the Vermont Studio Center for the Arts, the Hermitage Foundation, and others. Her short stories, poems, and essays have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies, including most recently The Atlantic, the Kenyon Review Story, Agni Literary Journal, Agni Literary Journal, Emergence, Oxford American, and Southern Cultures. She currently teaches creative writing at the University of Kentucky, and she is a Bush Holbrook Endowed Professor. Crystal Wilkinson.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you all. Thanks to all the Poet Laureates. Thank you, Amy. I was crying. Come talk to us at UK. MFA. College, we got you. We're ready. I'm just going to read one poem. I've been on the road a lot and have missed my husband, so I'm going to read this one for him. Witness for Ron Davis. I'm convinced that if you could have seen my grandmother standing in the doorway waiting for him to come home from the fields, if you'd smelled that spectacular evening thick with sweat and felt the pulsing of the stars, if you'd borne witness to the animals' moans echoing in the holler that night, if you just could have seen the hair rise up on Granddaddy's arm like that, like offerings to God, when his elbow touched hers, if you could have seen her longing dissipate just a little as he came through the door, smelling like a day's work, you should have seen them, close enough to breathe the same air while not even touching. He smiled at her without smiling. If you could have seen them watching me watch them, then you'd know how much I love you. If you could have heard her say, "You want some supper? We got pie." Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. This year's Writers' Day is coming to a close, but before we go, Silas, do you have an announcement? It says you do.
It's just that Gray Zeitz at Larkspur Press and Deborah Kessler at October Press have done this beautiful broadside of the poem I wrote for the inauguration, and so it's officially released today. I think that Poor Richard's Books has a few, and so it's just the letterpress process is just so amazing. It's its own kind of treasure, the way they individually set those letters, and so it's just an honor to have a piece of my work be in their hands and be delivered in such a beautiful way. So if you liked the poem, or if you love the artwork of Gray Zeitz and Deborah Kessler, then get you one. So, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Silas, and to all of our Kentucky Poets Laureate for being here and sharing your writing with us. Thank you, Amy. We're excited to have you here, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the coming years. Thank you, Secretary Casebeer. The Secretary has long been a supporter of the arts and the Kentucky Arts Council. We appreciate all that you do for us. Thank you to the Kentucky Historical Society and Executive Director Scott Alvey for hosting us in this space. Thank you, Dr. McCorvey. Thank you, Dior, for representing our board. We have some refreshments at the back of the room. We please ask you to help yourself and take some time to visit with all the writers here today. And don't forget, at 1 p.m. this afternoon, the Paul Sawyer Public Library, which is 4 blocks over on Wapping Street, they will be hosting a Kentucky Poets Laureate reading. We hope you take this opportunity to grab some lunch and walk over there and enjoy much more from the poets. Thank you all for celebrating Kentucky Writers Day with us today. Take care.